Hey y'all, Medicinal Mackenzie here with Naturally BC, and we're going to talk today about what it's been like for us being in naturopathic medical school. And the first thing that we have on our list, in all capital letters, is the word hard. It's been very, 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 very hard. But that's also what grad school is, and we recognize that. But we just want y'all to know that just because we're not in traditional medical school, that it's still very hard and very grueling. Long hours. And a huge, very steep learning curve, especially in the first year. Now that we're through the first year, I think, and we have that perspective and we've kind of seen the light and made it to the other side. It's a little bit different, but first year was rough.
Yeah. So we're both in our third year of 4 right now. And this was something that they kind of half prepared us, and they showed us that it was going to be 30 credits per quarter. And are you ready for that? And you're like, I don't
You're never really ready until you're doing it.
But it's heavy, and it's kind of modeled after allopathic medical school curriculum. That's why they want us to know everything. So they're like, all right, well, let's look at what other medical schools are doing, and let's model our curriculum after theirs. So, yeah, we don't just twiddle our thumbs all day for 4 years. It's intense, and we have... well, if you want to talk more about what it takes to get into school, and then we can talk about what school actually looks like on a day-to-day basis.
There's a list of prerequisites, just like traditional allopathic school, that every student has to have coming in, which is usually a bachelor's degree in some shape or form, plus those prerequisites. And then you apply, just like you do to traditional medical school. You have your personal statement, and then you also answer some prompts, like some questions about why you want to go to naturopathic medical school, why you want to be a doctor, your personal health experiences, etc. And then you pick if you get selected for an interview, you go in and interview at school, and you also tour and get a feel for campus and whatnot. And then your interview is with a professor, and then a person from admissions, and then they let you know if you've been admitted. And then once you're admitted, you kind of just get thrown into the fire. We were thrown into a Facebook group to try and find roommates. And then both of us relocated. So Brooke is from Arizona and I'm from Michigan. And so we moved across the country to come to school here in Portland, and had to kind of reinvent ourselves and our support system and figuring out what that looked like. And then the first year began.
Right. Very quickly thereafter.
Yeah. It was crazy. And so I moved here. Our first day was September 16th, and I moved to Portland August 10th or something like that. So I kind of had a month to get situated, which felt like a lot of time, and it still went by really fast and was really crazy to try and figure out a new city and with no friends or anything.
Right.
And so then the first year begins, and actually before first year, we have our white coat ceremony. We have a whole week of orientation. And the white coat ceremony, if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a really great historical tradition that all medical schools do nowadays. It started in the 80s or the 90s. And we start with what is called structure function, which is basically basic anatomy and physiology kind of combined into one. And it's the hardest, I think, the hardest class that we have taken, and it's 3/4 of that. And it's we start at 25 credits and then go up to 30.
Yeah, I think that class alone is 13.
The first quarter,
credits. Yeah. So it's a mix of everything. There's a lot of biochemistry in there, and physiology, and everything, structure and function related to the body.
Right, which is a huge piece of our first basic science board exams. Allopathic schools call it Step 1 or USMLE, and we just call it MPLEX. We have MPLEX 1 and MPLEX 2. So we have board examinations and clinic entrance exams, just like the allopathic students do. And so we spent a lot of time at the library late at night.
Oh my gosh.
Then we didn't shower for a long time. So lots of tears were shed, lots of questioning ourselves and our identities, and why did I do this? Is this really worth it? I think every person in graduate school has those moments, but us especially, because it's a 4-year commitment. It's not like getting a master's degree or something smaller, because it's a huge commitment. And then sometimes folks switch from the 4-year track to the 5-year track, or they're also dual degrees, so they're there for 6 or 7 years.
Right. Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different programs going on at our school, and then they do understand that this is a really rigorous 4-year program. So for some people, it just makes more sense with their life and their families to have it a little bit more spread out, to do like a 5-year track or a 6-year track. So the school is really good about that, with kind of being flexible with your own schedule. Yeah. But, for us, the 4-year program is really like best for what we needed and where we were.
Right.
So yeah, I think another thing that I wanted to add back to the interview process is that it's really important to see the school's clinic where you are interviewing.
Yes.
And most of the schools have this built into their interview day, or sometimes it's an additional option, like for another day you can come back and see the clinic. And I highly, highly recommend doing that, because a lot of your time is going to be spent in that clinic, and a lot of your patient interaction and education will be there. Yeah. So making sure that that component of the school is a good fit for you as well.
Right.
Because not everybody does it the same way.
No.
And not every, clinic is set up the same way or has different, modalities in their clinic. So just making sure you do take advantage of that opportunity if that is an option.
Yeah. Well, you should take advantage of all of those opportunities on interview day, or like
do everything.
And make sure you give yourself like more than just 24 hours at the location that you're interviewing at, so that you can see the city separately from your interview day.
Yes.
And then you can have your interview day, and then you can have like a fun day that you're not just spending traveling right after interview time. And because you want to see the school through a lens that isn't clouded by you being nervous for your interview.
Right. Which you will be.
Right.
That whole day, it's like, there were times where I felt like I visited a school and I was like, thank goodness I took pictures, because I did not remember that, or I didn't remember that element of the campus, or things can start to run together when you visit multiple campuses.
It's blurry.
Yeah, that's really important, to definitely take the time and see, is this a place where you can live for the next 4, 5, 6 years?
Yeah, because it's not just going to be the 4 years. You'll likely get sucked into living there or staying there longer. Or maybe you'll fall in love with it and it's like a good thing, but I would not always look at things through rose-colored glasses. I would kind of like assume the worst, or like the longest. Like kind of, you're going to be there for a decade. Right. 10 years. Like that's a really nice number. So our first 2 years of education are basically mostly in the classroom. There's a lot of learning physical exam skills that's integrated into that, and then we have a couple standardized patient interactions, and then we also do sim lab where we are working with like a robot dummy in kind of emergency situations. So we do touch a little bit on emergent situations, and we know how to delegate that and like call 911 obviously, but we're not going to be ER docs or anything. So the scope there is a little bit different. So the first 2 years are mostly in the classroom, and then the second 2 years are mostly clinical education and experience. And so right now in our third year, we are what we call secondary. So we're basically like interns or glorified MAs. So we have the primary, whom we take direction from, then we also have the attending and the resident that we're also taking direction from. And so we're doing things like rooming patients, performing vitals, going through medications and allergies, and then we're supposed to also be performing our 8-system 5-minute exam on every single, 8-system 5-minute exam on every single patient, so that we can learn and be exposed to normal heart and lung sounds and what's normal, so that eventually one day we can also know what's abnormal.
Right. Yeah. So I think a big difference is between like that first and second year. First year is a lot of anatomy, physiology, microbiology, and a little bit of introduction to naturopathic medicine, and a little class on herbs and pharmaceuticals and nutrition. And it's kind of like a sprinkling to keep your interest, almost, is how I felt about it. Like, don't worry, this stuff is coming, even though it's not right now. And then in your second year, you enter kind of the block curriculum setup, which is modeled after, many other medical schools do that block curriculum. So you have your cardiology block where it's everything cardio, which is a lot, but you learn your physical exams, you learn nutrition for cardio, pharmaceuticals, diseases, pathology. It's all everything cardio in those 12 weeks. And so then we're still in the block curriculum right now. Like, we're still doing block-based systems. Yeah. But now we're transitioning. We've got like 1 foot in the classroom and 1 foot in the clinic.
Whereas our 4th year, it's pretty much no classroom, only clinic. And that's pretty much all you're doing. You're trying to hone in on your clinical skills, which makes sense. Like I think that works out really well. And that's really important that it's set up like that. And then at the end of our 2nd year, we take 2 different board exams. We take our OSCE 1, which is our clinic entrance exam. And so we have to pass that before we're allowed to perform as secondaries in any capacity in clinic. Right. And then we also take NPLEX 1, which is similar to the USMLE 1 or STEP 1, which is our basic science boards examination. Yeah. And we have our own like governing body and grading system and everything, just like the allopathic medical schools do. And then beginning of 3rd year, just like Brooke said, we're doing a little bit less classroom stuff, but we're still learning a ton. Yes. So right now we're in our repro and what's the other one? Rheumatology, immunology block. Oh my gosh. And so that's what we're learning right now, and we're knee deep in all of those things. I'm trying to think, like, what else? Oh, so the different modalities that we learn. So in addition to learning, like, what pharmaceutical we would give a patient in a specific situation, all the things that allopathic doctors learn, we're also learning about herbs. We're learning about homeopathy, physical medicine, nutrition. What am I missing?
I mean, there's a lot of things, too, that go into, different diagnostic pieces of diseases. So, kind of figuring out the diagnosis, like knowing what are the proper labs and imaging to order. And, that's a big part of it. What physical exam observations are you going to hear or see or feel, and kind of knowing where to start, and then, getting the proper diagnosis, which I think is really, really important. And then where to go from there. We have this whole list of treatment options to pull from that kind of depend on what the patient is interested in and where they're at. But
in our 1st year, we began learning how to do a patient intake and what that looks like, and how to interview folks and do that kind of interaction, because that's a huge piece of medicine. And then that's a skill that we're able to hone in on over the next 4 years. And I think that's something that naturopathic medicine really excels at, is building patient rapport and bedside manner, and knowing how to communicate with the patient and meet them where they're at, and saying, hey, look at all these great options that we have for you. You can take the pharmaceutical and run if you want, or we have a lot of other avenues that we can travel down. And so we are being taught how to empower our patients and kind of give them the options and do the whole informed consent thing.
Right. And that's really important, because some people will walk in and say, I just want this medication for this. I am not willing to change my diet, my lifestyle.
And that's okay.
Right. And that's absolutely the patient's right. And we are also taught to not look at that as, or with any form of judgment or bias, and so that's why we're trained in that modalities, because that's something that's important for people. And sometimes they need a higher intervention like that. But then there are times where people will walk in and say, okay, what else can I do for this? Or is there anything else I can do for this? Or if I have this lifelong condition, what can I do to be healthier in the meantime?
Right.
And how do we support them in that? And sometimes they feel like there's either an overwhelming amount of options on the internet where they don't even know where to start.
Right.
Or they've been told by someone that there is nothing else they can do. And so I feel like we have a really good understanding of, what are things that they can do, what are different avenues we can go down, like whatever their lifestyle allows, and finances and things like that.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of, we could talk about that forever. That's like a whole separate topic too.
True.
The humanity of healing, and that's one of my favorite topics. But yeah, meeting the patient where they're at and telling them these are our options. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And that's a thing that naturopathic medicine really excels at. So today we talked about how hard it is to be in naturopathic medical school, and we talked a little bit about our curriculum. We talked about some of our board examinations. We talked about some of our personal experiences, and in other videos we've talked about our massive educational backgrounds that we have and experience, and clinical experience. And then we talked about some of the clinical training and a little bit of difference there. And then we also talked about the interview process and what that kind of looks like for going to naturopathic medical school. So drop your comments and questions below, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and all other platforms. I'm Medicinal Mackenzie.
I'm Naturally BC.
And we'll see you soon.